Good morning, Vinnie. Thanks for having me. Really happy to be here.
Thanks for joining me.
Likewise, yeah. So I'm going to tell you about Strivr a little bit.
Before you do that, you got to
Yeah,
tell me what's behind you. The stamp
yeah,
collection.
these are golf balls, also known as my personal stamp collection. There's a logo on every one of these for every course I've ever played. I think I'm up to like 264 and counting. I'll shift my screen here. You can see I got a whole nother rack that I need to fill. So this
Is
is my
Saint,
passion
is
outside of
Saint
work.
Andrew Saint Andrew one of them?
Not yet, not
Not
yet.
yet.
Hoping to get there soon. So yeah.
Oh, great.
Awesome. So yeah, I thought we'd start today by just, maybe taking a couple minutes before I share some slides and giving our founding story. We have a kind of a unique background as far as startups go. So I grew up in San Diego, which is actually where I live now. My wife and I moved back last summer back home during, all the COVID stuff. And I went to Stanford as an undergrad, played football there from 2003 to 2007. For those who follow Stanford football, those were the dark ages. We lost a lot of games. We were a lot better after I left, which is great, but not the best experience as far as
John Lynch was long gone, right?
John Lynch was long gone. Yeah, John Elway was long gone, obviously. But yeah, so I ended up working in consulting after school for a couple of years, and then I went to business school at USC. And while I was in business school, I had this crazy thought: if I don't see coaching before I turn 30, I'll regret it forever. So I actually accelerated my MBA, finished early, and I went back to Stanford. I did not need another master's at the time, but the only way to get on the staff was to be a graduate assistant for the football team. So I coached there in 2013 and 14. And my master's thesis, since I was also in school, was to come up with a way to train football players using virtual reality. The whole premise being, here's a VR device right here. This is a headset. The whole premise being a quarterback puts this thing on their face and their body is off the field, but their brain thinks they're on the field, right? It's a much more realistic way to see what's going on during a play, and you can get an infinite number of reps in a short amount of time versus.
And you don't feel sore at the end of the practice.
Yeah, ton of benefits, right? So long story short, it's a very successful academic project, and David Shaw, Stanford's head coach, literally sits me down in December of 2014 at the end of the year and says, "Hey, you got to get out of here. You're way too smart to be a football coach. It's not going anywhere. Come back if you want, but that thing's awesome. You need to start a company, and I would love to give you some money to get off the ground if you'd be willing to take it." so that, I think I'm one of the only people that's ever been fired with a non-severance check for $30,000 that was instead an investment into a startup. So that's how we started. Had a ton of success in sports in the first 18 months or so. We generated several million in revenue, customer funded, got to 30 employees. And then in the summer of 2016, we get this random lucky phone call from this guy at Walmart named Brock. And he says, "Hey, Derek, I'm a donor to University of Arkansas, and I just saw your quarterback simulator. I'd love to talk to you about employee training." So I go down there pretty much on a whim, walk out with a handshake agreement for a pilot, and decided on the flight back, we are going to raise money. We're going to pivot the company to the enterprise, and off we go. And here we are 6 years later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, here we are 6 years later. And
I thought you wanted to make Arkansas the SEC, dominant SEC.
Yeah. It's just funny how things work out. So here we are, 6 years later, and we're the leading startup, really maybe the leading company in the world, even compared to some of the big ones, using VR for the purpose of employee training. We have over 20,000 headsets out in the field. We work with Walmart, Bank of America, Verizon, FedEx, a lot of blue chip companies. We're very fortunate. 120 employees and growing, and life is good.
And so, this is in white collar jobs. I mean, you would think it'd be more useful.
Yeah, no. So actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I think the employment world can be separated into two very distinct categories. Frontline workers and knowledge workers, right? And there's a little bit of blend here and there, but for the most part, we are a frontline worker play first and foremost.
As in field service frontline?
So I have a slide on that in a little bit to show what customers are doing. But yeah, for the most part, like operational efficiency, things you would build, use your hands on, situational awareness, right? So perfect segue. Why don't we jump in, and I'll kind of give the overview here. I'll share my screen. Let's just make sure you can see this. We good?
Yep.
Good on your end? Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to go fast because there's a lot going on here. But first and foremost, this is the problem we are solving in the world. I think we've all been in I see you laughing. I think we've all been in this woman's shoes before. This isn't to say that every learning and development initiative ends up this way, but 8 times out of 10, when we do these compliance trainings, certain forms of upskilling, et cetera, this is often the end result, and the information goes in one ear and out the other, and it's largely ineffective. This is not a new concept. This is a 2,000-year-old quote from Confucius, and we are now in the cheaper, lighter, faster era of virtual reality. And therefore, VR has a chance to be the learning by doing technology, which is, referenced in the quote here. And then lastly, as far as, metaphors are concerned, this is the one that really resonates the strongest with our customers. And that is a pilot in a flight simulator, right? We are all thankful for pilots to get a lot of reps in flight simulators and literally prove they can fly the plane before they ever actually fly the plane in the real world, right? And this is how we coach our customers to think. And from a product perspective, this is what we're trying to do at Strivr. We're trying to build a flight simulator for blank, insert job here, from quarterback to janitor, to CEO and everyone in between. So, big picture wise, this is what we're doing at Strivr. And then lastly, as far as big picture, before we dive into the specifics, this is our opinion of where the world is going. Now this could play out in 2 ways. It could be literal. I think we all understand how the world works now, right? We start with a company, we get our cell phone, our tablet, our computer, right? Whatever pieces of hardware the company wants us to have. And a VR headset could very much be a part of that starter pack, right? Or it could be more metaphorical, where, for example, every hospital has 5 headsets for surgeons to train on, right?
I was going to ask you, has the cost of the device gone down enough for everyone to be justified?
Absolutely. I mean, this device that I just held up, this thing costs $300, right? And you're certainly going to see, there are higher end headsets out there. Apple's coming out with something next year that's rumored to be around $2,000, but you're going to see a wide spectrum, no different than cell phones, tablets, computers, right? And companies are going to make those decisions. But I think you're nailing it, Vinnie, right? Like, there are going to be some companies that want to do one device per person, and there's going to be companies that have more of a shared model. Like, for example, right now today, there are 4 headsets in every Walmart store in the United States, right? And they share them just like they have shared computers and tablets and other things over the years. So this is the big picture. Now let's talk about us. And again, we'll go fast. I only have a handful of slides, but there's a lot of information. So first and foremost, when we have this challenge at Strivr, when we talk to folks like yourself, investors, partners, acquirers, customers, this is all anyone sees, because they can really only see and feel and touch the headset, and they put it on their face and they see the content and they interact with it. So very often the first 2 questions we get 90% of the time are, what hardware do you use and who makes the content? And those questions aren't wrong. They're just really not at the heart of what we're trying to do at Strivr. Okay. We are setting Strivr up to function very much like an enterprise software company. And much like Workday, SAP, Oracle, et cetera, our software platform is very much what I like to call the plumbing or the infrastructure of doing VR at scale in an organization. Okay. And we'll go very quickly through this. We're not going to go into every detail, but here is our software platform in a nutshell. You've got 2 sides of this ecosystem. You've got the world of content creators, and you've got the end users and the customers. We have built a suite of content creation tools that we have been using ourselves for the last 4 years to make content for our customers. Those tools are starting to get out into the world, into the ecosystem, so we don't have to rely on ourselves to only produce content for customers, right? On the right side, we've got a suite of products and tools for the customer. What does the UI UX look like when the employee puts the headset on their face? What does the content management and device management system look like so they can, manage all this stuff at scale? What does that data and analytics platform look like when you log into your portal? On and on and on. And then in the middle, the least sexy, but most important thing on this slide as it relates to existing at scale in the enterprise is this component right here. All things platform infrastructure, safely handling data, what's going on, PII, what's going on in the cloud versus on the device, right? Latency, uptimes, all this stuff, passing encryption testing and pen testing. There's a lot here. I think anyone that's watching this that has ever been involved in an enterprise business knows that sometimes you get these IT assessments They're 97 pages. They take you a year to prove that you are not going to mess up their systems, right? So
Derek, isn't there a risk that usually the infrastructure is where the bigger guys, bigger vendors tend to be better, right? So
yeah,
Facebook putting so much money in the metaverse and so on, isn't it likely one of the bigger vendors is going to own that piece?
I mean, potentially, yeah. I think here's what's happening right now. You know, VR is mainly a consumer play right now. It's starting to make its way into the enterprise more, and yeah, as a result, we will see the big players in the HCM world, the enterprise software world, except even the consumer world for that matter. We will see them invest in this. Well, this is a startup discussion, right? So for us, I mean, this is a build versus buy conversation for some of these folks, and we certainly are on a path to maybe being the first unicorn in this space, or someone's going to want to, you know, hand us a term sheet for a lot of money, and we got to make a decision, right? I mean, that's just where this could all go, and some of those conversations are already starting. So great, I'm glad you brought that up. Great point.
And building the community, that how fast is that growing?
It's so certainly COVID did not do the world any favors, right? I mean, that kind of set everyone back a little bit. But actually, on the flip side of that, there's two things that stand out that where COVID really helped. Number one, consumer VR has picked up tremendously since COVID. I mean, these devices are out there now. We're in the tens of millions. Consumers are using them for gaming and other social things. And then second, HR and L&D, which is our primary buyer and stakeholder in an organization, now has a much larger seat at the table as a result of, you know, the Zoom world we all live in, changes to how they interact with their employers, remote work, on and on, right? And so those are very good macroeconomic tailwinds for us, and we're starting to see things pick up significantly in the ecosystem. Great, so that's our software, and then you know, one slide on our services, which I also like to, you know, liken to the systems integration world that we see in today's HCM, you know, much more mature HCM market. So here you go. Every engagement at Strivr starts with some sort of strategic kickoff. Hey, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Where are we going to put these devices? You know, what ROI are you looking for? How do you train people? On and on, right? That's step one. That is typically free consulting for the customer. Let's just be honest, right? That information then informs.
Are you going to cover a couple of the use cases you've had with customers?
What was that question, Vinnie?
I mentioned a couple of use cases.
Oh yeah. So I've got a big slide on this afterward, but in short, you know, typically operational efficiency, health and safety, and all things soft skills are where we start, and I'll break that down in a minute. Yeah. So steps 2, 3, and 4 are all about content creation. Step 5 is setup and provisioning of devices, you know, rolling these things out by the tens, the hundreds, the thousands. You know, we literally have a warehouse in Santa Clara. We built an assembly line. We run these things through an assembly line. Step 6, rollout and adoption, change management, all that good stuff.
The device is proprietary.
So we actually, no, we're not a hardware company. So we have Oculus devices out in the field. We have Pico devices out in the field. We're talking to Microsoft and Apple and other companies every day about, you know, where this is all going and how can we help. So, and then lastly, step 7, you know, performance analysis, you know, data reviews, et cetera. So this is how we engage with customers. And as you alluded to, our goal is obviously to take this image, which is today a very people focused effort by Strivr, and put some of these pieces in the hands of the ecosystem so we can scale the business, not unlike what the large enterprise software companies have done to grow their business over time. Okay, and then lastly, you know, we get some FAQs a lot that I think are really relevant for this audience. You've already asked this question twice, so here we go. First and foremost, how are companies using virtual reality? This is less a Strivr, more of, you know, thought leadership. Here you go. 4 main buckets. Operational efficiency. So, you know, there's a spectrum here from step-by-step building of something to situational awareness on Black Friday for a Walmart store manager, and everything in between, right? Health and safety, again, a spectrum. Slips, trips, and falls on a factory floor to active shooter and everything in between, right? Customer service, especially in the last 2 years, this has been big from a social unrest perspective, a mask mandate perspective, a lot of customer interaction type practice. And then lastly, all things interpersonal skills, soft skills, et cetera. And I love, Vinnie, that you brought up right away, hey, frontline workers versus knowledge workers, right? So typically your top bar here, the top three is a frontline worker type use case, and then the bottom one is typically a knowledge worker type use case.
I mean, I'm sure you have plenty of enough business, but field service in particular, you should be looking into the more blue collar areas. But
Yep.
During the pandemic, I saw a lot of that exploded. Remote assistance to
Yeah.
younger field service folks, because the older guys, they didn't want to expose more
Yep.
to COVID and so on. So,
yeah, and maybe if we do this again in a year or two, this will be more of an augmented reality conversation, not a virtual reality conversation. And
Yep.
field service is the first kind of home run use case in the AR world. So here they are right here. Pretty fairly straightforward. And then the next question we get all the time is, can it scale? We're literally talking about like putting a device on someone's face, right? Bringing a new piece of hardware into an organization. How does that scale? Well, the short answer is yes. Walmart scaled it, and Bank of America has scaled it, and others have scaled it. But really, it comes down to can it scale for you, right? And how does that? How does this work operationally? How does this work from a cost perspective, from an ROI perspective? Segueing me to my last FAQ, which is how much does it cost? We get that question all the time, and in typical Silicon Valley fashion, I will give you the answer. It depends, on how much you want to do relative to size and scale of deployment. What I can tell you definitively, though, is here's the Strivr business model right here, and here are the line items that usually show up in a statement of work for any company that is doing some sort of VR engagement with us or not. Typically, the hardware services content piece is more of a one-time cost. And at Strivr, as I showed you earlier with the software platform, we're really leaning into our software platform as being that source of recurring revenue, right? So therefore, I will answer the question, how much does it cost? Unfortunately, it's going to be a large range, but this is true. We have had customers pay us as little as $50,000 for some sort of pilot or proof of concept. We've have them pay as much as $500,000. Then on an ongoing basis, we have customers paying us as little as $65,000, $70,000, and we have customers paying us as much as $5 million. And obviously there's a big spectrum, right? So again, it depends on the size and scale of the organization, what they're looking to do, on and on and on. So a fairly wide range, but pretty easy to kind of do the mental math on
just a concept, just a comment on, because it's labor intensive, building the content.
Yep.
As you build your ecosystem, try and find those that have much more of a digital mindset.
Oh yeah.
Traditional integrators are a little too labor intensive, so you don't want to get into that bracket.
Absolutely. Yep. We're seeing that play out every day. And today's systems integration, Vinnie, is more of a content creation partner, right? Eventually, we will see the plugins to LMS systems and the IT integrators and all that, but I think that's still a few years out. So that's how much it costs. And then the last thing I wanted to hit on before we leave, or before I shut it down here, is ROI. So nice segue from scale and cost to, all right, what is the ROI here? And we could talk all day about this, but I'm gonna leave it with two very basic bullets. Number one, we have proven time and time again, as have third parties, that when you put this device on your face, based on the science of how this all works, you can achieve the same learning outcome in a fraction of the time. So we have had customers take 3-hour lectures and e-learnings and boil them down to 20 minutes in a headset. So therefore, your first ROI opportunity is time savings, speed to proficiency, and therefore cost savings. Some of our customers are cutting their onboarding times in half, and the result is the same from a proficiency standpoint. So that is a major ROI opportunity for customers when you add up tens of thousands of people, when you consider that some of these are very high churn roles and they need to get them proficient as fast as possible. Big ROI opportunity. And then the second one that I wanted to mention is real world performance improvement. Now, to be clear, when we started in sports, 8 years ago, I didn't walk in to meet with Bill Belichick and say, you're going to win the Super Bowl if you use Strivr, and Tom Brady's never going to throw another interception. I mean, he would have laughed me out of the room if I did that. So you got to be careful here, right? But the reality is as we have gone further along with Strivr, and as we've worked with more and more customers, we have seen where using VR as a practice tool, getting more of those repetitions, that learning by doing experience, our customers are improving in the real world. They are putting boxes on the truck faster. They are making fewer mistakes. That we have gotten phone calls from people.
You can quantify. I can buy the first one. The second one, I'm a little.
Yeah, no. So actually, Vinny, the second one is easier to quantify because literally it is, hey, we've been doing this for a month, and how is our productivity, right, in this warehouse? So that's actually easier to quantify for a customer. The challenge is it often it's also tougher because we're not the only thing they're doing. Okay, so your package scan rate has gone up. Well, you've done 10 things this month. Is Strivr the one, right? And so and sometimes it may take quarters or years for some of these things to play out. But the reality is bullet 2 is the holy grail of impact and ROI. And the last thing I'll say on this is this is more fuzzy, but it can show how powerful this can be. We have had some customers that have unfortunately had store robberies and in-store shootings and things in the last few years. And we have had employees call us and say, your product saved my life because I knew what to do in that situation. I remained calm, right? And so again, that is not putting a box on a truck, but as far as the real world impact of what we're doing, that's very, very gratifying, obviously. So that is Strivr. Obviously not a ton of time, and there's a lot going on here. I'm very appreciative of you letting us join the show here for a little bit. And
I got to ask you, so have you gotten invited back into the football world? By the way, I live in Tampa, so I would like Brady to not throw any interceptions this year.
Yeah. Actually, it's it's funny you should ask that. So we still do sports today. It's a very small part of the business. It knows its role. It's Strivr. It serves its purpose, but it's not the major growth driver for the company. Tampa is a customer of ours. When Bruce Arians came in, because originally we worked with him in Arizona, I was one of his first phone calls, and you can go on Google and type in Tom Brady virtual reality, and you will read some articles about how he used Strivr to help learn the playbook when he got there a couple years ago.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, come on down. Come over, fly over to Tampa.
Yeah. I'll let you know. We'll get on the golf course. We'll go play Copperhead.
Add to your collection there.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vinny. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.